child care is important. It's a personal decision for working families. Been there, done that. Most of us have. And it is expensive, but we got real problems by the way the federal government funds our child care program. Now, it's pretty interesting to me we're doing this right now when we are having problems with our debt, okay? But that being said, we must remember that child care is run by the states, not the federal government. And that's the way it should be. But if my colleagues here get their way, child care facilities would only be eligible for all this new money only if they play by federal rules. Do we want that? We got to really think about that. That means that the federal government will control the curriculum, require child care workers to have a four-year degree, price out the middle class. Ms. Lucas, would imposing a four-year degree requirement on child care employees, what would it do to the labor market?
Well, I think we've seen that in Washington, D.C., where they've moved in the direction of making these requirements, and it would obviously make it much more expensive. And as a parent, I think it is misguided because, as we all know, when you're looking for care for especially your youngest kids, what you're really focused on is having somebody who is loving, caring, patient, and having a four-year degree is certainly not a necessary requirement in that and does needlessly push up costs.
Thank you. What would it do to our religious providers and our private providers?
I do think that that's something we should be concerned about. And I think it's great when you have state-based programs that are, basically providing families with vouchers so they can make those choices. But, more than half of my understanding is a little more than half of all daycare slots are faith-based, and we need to make sure of that. I worry when I was looking at the proposals for Build Back Better and the child care provisions in there, that there was a threat that there could be things that would be inconsistent with faith-based care, and I think that that's something we should all make sure is absolutely protected because that is really important. The environment, parents want to be able to have an environment that they think is supportive of their children.
Ms. Lauren, do you have anything to add to that about faith-based? Not really?
I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So essentially, we'd be putting our children in public schools from 3 years old and up. Is that what we're talking about here?
I worry about that. I do think that sometimes the model, if we focus on a model like expanding K through 12 education, that could be really problematic. And I do think COVID showed us some of the problems. And it wasn't just, we've had a lot of conversations about curriculum policies, but also things like just staying open or masking policies. I think it's worth noting, people haven't talked much about Head Start, and that is the federal government spends more than $10 billion. That's about $10,000 a year. But Head Start has a lot of problems. It's got waste, fraud, and abuse problems. It's very expensive per hour. It provides less hours per care than most other providers. And then Head Start kids were among those who are forced to wear masks longer than just about anybody else. Long after we'd realized that adults had been able to take their masks off, and we were learning that masks were not just not doing any good for kids in schools, but they were actually harming them. So I worry about kind of some of these providers or these institutions becoming political footballs.
Ms. Lauren, what would spending this kind of money do to our financial system? That's a little bit easier question.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
What would spending this kind of money, all this money, what would it do to our financial system?
Yeah, I can't answer the question about the financial system, I'm sorry. But what I can say is that historically, we have invested about $8 to $10 billion a year in childcare, and the $52.5 billion that was appropriated during the pandemic was really unprecedented. And that is part of the reason that states face challenges in spending that money.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Casey.